They said her hips were wrong for breeding, until a human held her like she was sacred. The orbital archive station drifted through a forgotten star system like a mausoleum with a heartbeat. It didn't creak or hum, not exactly. But if you stood still long enough, the air seemed to breathe. The pulse of old tech throbbed under the floor plates, barely audible. The bioluminescent walls glowed in pale waves, a rhythm mimicking sleep, but nothing here slept, especially not in the isolation wing. Oral moved through the station like someone walking through a sacred ruin. Each step was measured, reverent. He didn't belong here, not really. Not in the way the engineers or administrators once did. His boots disturbed dust patterns untouched for decades, and yet he made no noise. Archivist intuits were trained not to leave ripples. His gloves were black and seamless, tuned to reduce even fingerprint contact. The lenses over his eyes adjusted as he walked, flicking through thermal overlays, particle residue, emotional traces. Each chamber lining the corridor was a sealed coffin of memory, the last remnants of extinct species, not preserved out of reverence, but for data. Chamber 141G's identifier blinked faintly red, one of only 3 still connected to power. Zarathi B genotype, decommissioned womb cast, anatomical deviation, hip-to-womb ratio exceeds cast thresholds, status, discarded specimen. He paused. There was no name, just a designation, sterile and cruel. But he already knew her name, Ari. The panel hissed as it opened. Cool, filtered air drifted out, carrying a faint scent of medicinal resin and something older, something floral, now faded. The light inside was a dusky violet blue, casting deep shadows across the narrow containment room. She sat against the far wall, not huddled, but not open either, her arms crossed over her chest, knees drawn slightly inward. She wore a gray linen wrap issued to cryo recoveries, thin, functional, designed to erase individuality. Her skin was a soft, opalescent violet, the color of stormlit dusk. Her hair, impossibly long, spilled over her shoulder in deep green waves, like river weed caught in a current. And her eyes, they didn't flinch, but they didn't hope either. He entered slowly, not like a rescuer, like someone approaching a shrine. She tracked him silently, the tension in her body subtle but unmistakable, a stiffness in the neck, a tightening in the thigh muscles. Not fear, expectation. She was bracing for something. He didn't speak. He crossed the floor, lowered himself to sit against the opposite wall, and pulled off his right glove. Then he placed his bare hand, scarred, warm, very human, palm down on the cold metal floor between them. He let the silence speak for him. Her gaze flicked to the hand, then to his face. "Why are you here, human?" Her voice was hoarse, as if unused for years. He looked at her without shrinking. "To listen," he said quietly. She blinked, slow. Her jaw tensed. "They all said that. The scientists, the breeders, the ethicists. They said they were listening, while they measured my bones and calculated my gestation efficiency. I'm not here to measure," he said, "or to use." Ari's eyes narrowed. She studied him like she didn't believe in kindness anymore. "Then what are you doing in a dead station full of failed things?" Oral's hand remained on the floor, unmoving. "I preserve what others discard." She didn't move, but something shifted in her expression, barely perceptible. "You mean broken things," she whispered. His voice remained steady. "I mean sacred things no one knew how to value." Ari turned away, her green hair sliding across her shoulder like silk. Her knees drew in tighter. She didn't speak for a long time. The silence between them thickened. The walls around them pulsed faintly with living circuitry, soft, slow, blue-green. Finally, she asked, "You can read memory through touch, can't you?" Oral nodded. If the memory was strong enough, if it wanted to survive. She looked down at her own body. Her hands gripped her thighs as if holding herself together. "Even from bodies?" "Yes," he said. A pause. Then she looked up. "I want you to see it." His breath caught. "I want you to understand why they threw me away," she said. "And I want to know if it was really me that was wrong." He didn't move. "Only if you want me to." Ari hesitated. Then, deliberately, she loosened the wrap around her waist, not fully, just enough to bear the broad curve of her hip. Oral moved slowly, reverently. He crawled closer on hands and knees, his gaze never dropping to her breasts or thighs. He looked at her eyes, always her eyes. She didn't flinch until his fingers touched her, and when he did, memory surged through her, violent and vivid, cold metal tables, straps across her wrists, needles in her abdomen, a voice, clinical, female, deviation at 17 degrees, unacceptable, hands touching her hips like she was meat, prodding, judging, measuring failure. She gasped and pulled back, but Oral didn't chase. He just waited. Her hand trembled where she touched the floor. Her breath came in sharp gulps. "I was made to carry life," she whispered. "But my body didn't fit their numbers. They said I couldn't be standardized." Oral leaned in again gently. His palm cradled her hip, reverent and steady. "This," he murmured, "is not wrong." Then he did something no one had ever done. He kissed the outer curve of her hip, not with hunger, with devotion. Her body shuddered. She didn't cry, but her lips parted as though something sacred had just been released from her chest. "You don't even know who I was," she said, voice cracked and raw. Oral met her eyes. "No," he said, "but I see who you still are." The lights above them dimmed, briefly. A flicker, then another. Oral looked up, his brow furrowed. He tapped a small scanner clipped to his belt. A delay. Pulse irregularity. Power redirection. Non-scheduled. Someone else had accessed the grid. The station wasn't as empty as it seemed. He didn't say anything yet. No need to frighten her. But his spine went stiff. His muscles coiled. Ari watched him. "You felt something," she said. He didn't lie. "Maybe." She hesitated again. Then slowly, so slowly, her fingers reached for his. She laced them over his hand resting on the floor. For the first time, she didn't just endure touch. She asked for it. Her voice dropped to a hush. "Will you stay?" And in her tone, something flickered for the first time. Not fear, not shame, hope. Oral's hand closed around hers, steady and warm. "As long as you want me to." She hadn't let go. That mattered. Ari's fingers still rested on Oral's. No tremble, no retreat, just a quiet, lingering grip that held the ghost of warmth. That small, simple choice, to touch, to stay, had more weight than anything she'd said. The lights flickered overhead, brief, stuttering. Oral didn't react, not visibly, but his breath slowed. His posture adjusted just slightly, a fraction more upright. Inside his neural HUD, alert lines traced the outline of a power fluctuation. External interference. The archive was no longer isolated. Someone was reaching in. He muted the notification and glanced at her. "I'm hungry," Ari said. Her voice didn't hold apology or demand, just fact. She said it as if it surprised her, like the hunger had been waiting, silent beneath years of numbness, and had finally risen to the surface. "You should be," Oral replied. "Your system's burning energy fast. Stasis reboots aren't gentle." She gave a small, hollow laugh. "They didn't teach us to feel hunger, just how to suppress it. I imagine they didn't teach you how to enjoy food either." "No." He reached for the heat coil unit in his pack, pulled out a sealed ration, human design, adaptable compounds, protein-rich, and activated the warming cycle. The scent rose slowly. Heat, broth, a subtle note of cumin. Ari's eyes followed the steam. Her posture remained guarded, but her body leaned toward it before her mind could protest. He handed her the container. She held it in both hands. Her fingers curled tightly around the warmth like she was afraid it might vanish. The first sip made her flinch. The second, she choked a little, swallowing too fast. Her eyes burned. She turned her face, tried to wipe at it without him seeing. "I forgot what warmth on the tongue feels like," she murmured. "Everything they gave us was cold, calculated. Nutrient volume per milliliter, no taste, no texture." "You don't have to eat fast," Oral said quietly. "No one's timing you." A pause. Then, "That's the first time I've heard that." She drank more slowly after that. The act seemed to disarm her, not completely, but the way her shoulders eased, the way her breathing settled, spoke of something inside her unwinding. "I remembered a woman," she said, "from before the assignments. She ran the gardens near the incubation halls. She used to give me a citrus flower when no one was looking. Told me the taste meant I was still alive." Oral waited. "She disappeared before my 10th sol cycle. No explanation. They cleared her room. I didn't ask questions. Because they punished curiosity. They punished anything that interrupted function." He nodded, eyes thoughtful. "And yet you remember the flower." "I don't know why. I was supposed to forget everything before induction." "Memory resists deletion," he said, "even in the body, especially in the body." She looked down at herself, then set the empty ration aside. So that's why it came back when you touched me. The memories, yes. Ari was silent a long time. Then, I didn't know if I hated or needed it. That's not a contradiction. Her lips parted, but she didn't speak. Not for a while. Then she reached up, pulled her long green hair back from her face, exposing the line of ridges along her temple, part of her biology, a subtle genetic marker of Zarathi fertility class. They'd once glowed faintly in heat cycles. Now they were dull. Do you see this? She asked. These marks? He nodded. Those are the symbols of value in my caste. But when my hips develop wider than the calculated gestation arc, when I no longer aligned with the ideal womb rotation, they turned these into reminders of failure. She didn't sound angry. She sounded tired, weary of being reduced to math. Oral leaned forward slowly, resting his elbows on his knees. Did anyone ever ask what you wanted? No one cared. We weren't meant to want. You do now. I don't know what it means to want. A soft beep echoed through his neural feed. Again, different this time. Narrow band override ping. Not just scanning, targeting. Someone was searching for her. The flag was old, bureaucratic, precise. Womb shri, retrieve or neutralize. His jaw clenched. She noticed the shift in his breathing. What is it? She asked. We're not alone anymore. Her body tensed. They're coming. Maybe. Maybe just a probe. But the ping is too specific to be random. Someone in the system knows you're alive. Ari stood, not stumbling now, but rooted. Her bare feet found their place on the metal floor with controlled steadiness. I won't go back, she said. You won't. Her eyes locked on his. You say that with certainty. Because I know what it means to lose someone. I've seen what happens when you hesitate. He didn't explain further. She didn't ask. They moved together through the dim corridor, the bioluminescent walls casting pale washes of color over their skin. Her violet, his olive-toned under synthetic cloth and fatigue. When they reached the control alcove, he slid the access panel open and clipped the neural port to his temple. The screen flickered to life. Code streamed. Oral worked fast, faster than most would believe possible. His fingers moved like he was sculpting something invisible, not typing. He wasn't just fighting protocol, he was rewriting it, ghosting the signal, forcing the archive to mislabel her chamber, creating digital echoes of her location across 50 empty pods. They won't find you easily, he said. I've scattered the signal, but it won't hold forever. How long? Hours, maybe less if they send a drone. Ari stepped closer. He noticed she was shaking, not with fear, but readiness. Fight or flight. But this time, her eyes were calm. She wasn't retreating into herself. She was facing forward. You were someone before all this, he said suddenly. Before the files. What was your name? Before they called you a specimen. She hesitated, then. They called me Ari even then. But once someone said it meant first bloom in one of the old dialects. He smiled faintly. That fits. A silence passed between them, not empty, charged. She touched his arm, her fingers curling softly against his sleeve. If this ends badly, she said, don't let them take my body. Don't let them recycle me. They won't, he said, not while I'm breathing. And then, softer, but we're not going to die here. Ari held his gaze. Then let me stay by your side. Not behind, not hidden. Oral offered his hand. She took it. Together they turned back down the corridor, toward warmth, toward danger, toward something neither of them could name yet, but both could feel. Not duty, not survival, beginning. The archive's breath had changed. Oral could feel it beneath his boots. Subtle but definite. The low-frequency hum that once lulled the station like a sleeping creature now thrummed with alert tension. Systems had shifted from passive monitoring to defensive posture, responding to something beyond the walls. Something watching, reaching. He and Ari walked in silence through the pulse-lit corridors, flanked by relics in stasis, the last breath of extinct species cataloged for no one. The bioluminescent light bled slowly across her bare shoulders and the emerald lengths of her hair, her steps firm but quiet. She hadn't asked questions since he disconnected the override ping. She didn't need to. Oral carried the silence for both of them. He scanned ahead using a short-range sonar sweep through his neural interface, masking it behind routine system maintenance protocols. His breathing remained calm, but his body was coiled, prepared. Ari noticed. She always noticed now. They'll send something, she said eventually. Not afraid, certain. He nodded. Most likely a hunter drone. Non-sentient, surgical, programmed to retrieve or destroy. Her lips parted slightly, her voice quiet but edged. To them, I'm corrupted data, a loose variable. To me, you're the variable that makes the equation worth solving. That made her blink. She didn't look away. They entered the environmental suite, a rarely used hydroponic chamber filled with nutrient fog and soft condensation. Faint green stalks climbed along the walls, long since abandoned by their keepers, but still breathing under the low-spectrum lights. The air was moist and rich with the scent of wet leaf and old oxygen. Ari slowed. She closed her eyes. This smells like the nursery domes. Oral didn't speak. He let her feel it. I used to run between the vine lanes when no one was watching, she said. I was small enough to hide. For a while, I believed the world ended at the garden walls. And when you learned it didn't, they took my body, made it something else, something useful. He stepped closer, careful not to break the moment. They tried to make you a container. She opened her eyes. But I remember the bloom vines, the way they pulsed open after misting, like they were reaching, needing. She turned toward him. There was a new steadiness in her voice. That's how it felt when you touched me. Not like you were taking, like you were meeting me where I was. I was, he said simply. A pause, long, still. Then she stepped toward him slowly and laid a hand on his chest. Her fingers didn't tremble this time. They rested over his heartbeat, steady and real beneath thin fabric. You're not like them, she said. No, he said. I'm not. Ari leaned her forehead into his shoulder, not seeking comfort, seeking contact. And Oral, carefully, silently, wrapped one arm around her waist. Her body stiffened for a breath, then softened into him. The moment held, then shattered. A high-pitched whine echoed down the corridor, too precise to be mechanical fault. Oral's HUD lit up with a proximity flag. Unauthorized entry, south perimeter breach, less than 200 meters and closing. Ari pulled back instantly. Is that? Yes. She didn't hesitate. Then we move. They exited the hydroponic chamber at a jog, Oral taking the lead, rerouting doors and bypassing the central grid to avoid triggering station-wide alerts. He could mask their biological signatures for now, but not for long. They reached a vertical shaft sealed by a secondary pressure lock. Oral tapped the panel, but the door didn't respond. Locked out? Ari asked, voice tight. He scanned the system. The override's spreading. They're taking root. He dropped to one knee, manually pried the interface panel open, and rerouted the power feed through his field kit. It bought them a 10-second window. The door hissed open. Inside, a cramped maintenance tunnel, narrow and steep. I can climb, she said before he could ask. She moved first, gripping the rail with sure hands, her long limbs graceful despite the confined space. Oral followed close behind. The air grew warmer as they ascended. This section had been closed off for decades, repurposed for waste heat dispersal. When they reached the top, he popped the hatch and scanned again. Nothing immediate, but the drone was close. Closer than he wanted it to be. We're heading to the atmospheric dock, he said. Old med transport might still be viable. If we can get off station, her hand closed around his arm. I'm not leaving if you don't. I'm not staying behind. Then don't talk like it's an option. His gaze held hers, then footsteps. Fast, sharp, too controlled to be random. Oral moved without thinking, pulled her behind a partition, shielded her with his body. The footsteps came closer. A silhouette passed the end of the corridor, a drone frame, bipedal, its surface gleaming with surgical chrome. It paused. Sensors swept the air. Ari didn't breathe. Oral's heart hammered, not from fear, from instinct. The drone tilted its head, then moved on. They stayed still another 10 seconds before slipping out the opposite end. As they ran, Oral's mind raced. One drone was manageable, but if it marked them, more would come. They reached the atmospheric dock. The emergency shuttle was still there, older than him by at least 20 years, but intact. He started the boot sequence. As the system engaged, Ari stepped beside him. She watched the display flicker to life. Lights turned green. You think this'll work? She asked. Doesn't matter, he said. We don't have another option. The drone alert blared again. This time, no longer distant. He turned to her. If this goes wrong, it won't. She reached for him again, not just for reassurance. She pulled him to her and kissed him. It was not tentative, not rushed, not desperate. It was deep, real. Her body pressed to his, her mouth warm and open against his. And when they pulled apart, she looked at him not as a relic or rescuer, but as her equal. "You came for me," she whispered. "Now I'm coming with you." The shuttle doors sealed behind them. Engines roared to life. Outside, metal thundered through the corridor. Inside, two hearts beat in rhythm. One breath, one escape, one beginning. The shuttle cut through the upper atmosphere of an abandoned lunar outpost, its frame rattling with age, held together by redundant systems and the faith of one man who refused to let go. Inside, the lights were dim, flickering intermittently as the emergency grid reasserted control. Ari sat across from Oral in the narrow passenger bay. Her knees were drawn close, her spine straight, not defensive, alert, a woman no longer caged, still learning what to do with the space around her. Neither of them spoke for several minutes. The silence wasn't awkward. It was weight of breath, of memory, of what they'd just survived. Outside the shuttle's porthole, the stars flickered like old wounds refusing to close. "You saved me," Ari said quietly. Oral didn't look at her at first. He was scanning the system readouts, routing their course through dead corridors in the void, uncharted pockets of sky that wouldn't show up on standard tracking relays. Finally, he looked over. "I told you I would." "That wasn't the question." "No, it wasn't." Ari studied him. "You risked everything, not just your position, your life, and I don't even know what you left behind." Oral hesitated, then shut the panel. His hands rested on his knees, palms open. "I used to work with reconstruction teams, post-catastrophe retrieval, war zones, collapsed colonies, failed terraforming sites. They'd send in automated units to clear what was left. I'd follow, trace the stories no one wanted to remember." "Why?" "Because someone had to. No one forced you into that number, but someone died because I didn't arrive in time." Ari waited. It was a refugee girl, half my age, hiding in a collapsed medical bay on Hallow 7. The scanners missed her. I didn't. I felt something in the metal, panic, heat, a memory of touch. By the time I broke through the sealed panel, she was already gone. Her throat moved, but she said nothing. They cleared the site that night, marked it clean, erased her name. She's not listed in any ledger. No one but me even knows she was there. "So that's why you're here," Ari said. "I swore I'd never let another voice disappear like that." She let that settle. No comfort offered, no attempt to dull the sharpness of it. When she finally spoke, her voice was steady. "And I was supposed to disappear. But you didn't. You remembered the flower, the garden walls." She nodded slowly. "And now, I remember more." He waited. "I was 12 cycles old when they reassigned me. Before that, I lived with a mid-caste educator. She was old, wore her hair in silver braids. She used to read to me. Touch was allowed then. Brief contact, affirmations during learning. She used to rest her hand on my back when I made a mistake. Never harsh, just there. Steady." Ari exhaled, eyelids fluttering. "When the committee took me for evaluation, she cried. They said that was a malfunction in her empathy calibration. She was retired 2 weeks later. I never saw her again." Oral's voice was soft. "Did she give you your name?" "Number." But she was the first to say it like it meant something. Ari turned to the wall, her voice hollow and flat. "I tried to conform. I stopped asking questions. I stood straighter, walked more efficiently. I even studied surgical diagrams to understand how to adjust myself. I thought maybe if I offered solutions, they wouldn't discard me." Her laugh came sharp, bitter. "They thanked me for the research and ordered a reclassification. Unoptimized structural development. That's how they phrased it. Not defective, just impractical." Oral stood, crossed to the ration console, and retrieved another pouch. He poured it into a thermal mug and brought it to her without a word. Ari accepted it. She didn't drink right away. There was one mirror in the sleeping chamber. I remember the day I finally stood in front of it and saw myself as they did. I measured everything: shoulder width, torso ratio, hip span. I ran the numbers twice. I already knew I didn't meet the standard. She turned the mug slowly in her hands. But I couldn't unsee what I saw next. My skin shimmered. The angles softened. My body, it looked like it belonged to someone, not something. Her eyes lifted, finding his. "They said I was wrong for carrying life. But when you touched me, I remembered what it felt like to be made for it. Oral didn't look away. Because you are. Her jaw tightened. You don't even know what that means to me. I don't need to. I can see what it does to you. For a while, the only sound was the quiet hum of the shuttle's drive core pushing them deeper into the void. The world behind them had burned. The one ahead hadn't taken shape yet. Then Ari leaned her head back against the wall. So what now? I've set course for a black station in the outer belt. Abandoned, off-grid. It's not much, but it's livable. For how long? As long as we want. Ari studied the ceiling. I used to believe I'd never have a choice. Every door I was led through had only one way out. This is the first time I've walked through a door and not known what was waiting. You're allowed to decide. Am I? Yes, Oral said. You get to exist for yourself now, not as a designation, not as a system metric, just as you. Ari turned her head toward him. There was something new in her eyes, not certainty, not peace, but a beginning. She drank the broth slowly this time. Then she stood, crossed the small space between them, and, in silence, she laid her hand on his chest again. No urgency, no need to speak, just presence. Oral placed his hand over hers. Neither of them moved away. Somewhere behind them, the station's warning logs faded into static. Ahead, the stars held nothing but unclaimed space. For the first time in either of their lives, that emptiness didn't feel like exile. It felt like freedom. The shuttle's low hum vibrated through the floor, a steady, intimate sound that felt more like breath than machinery. Somewhere in the system's core, recycled heat spread through narrow ducts, warming the cabin as the stars outside drifted into distant pinpoints, swallowed by the dark. They hadn't spoken in nearly 10 minutes, not because there was nothing left to say, but because silence had shifted into something else. Ari stood by the viewport, her silhouette framed by starlight and the faint orange hue from a navigation beacon outside. Her long green hair fell in soft waves down her back, glinting faintly in the low light. She'd pulled the linen wrap looser now, no longer holding it to shield herself, but simply wearing it. Her posture had changed too. It was no longer wary, no longer angled to defend. She stood open, still, watching. Oral watched her from across the cabin. He'd always watched her with reverence, but now that reverence hummed with gravity, something in him shifted every time she moved. He stood. She didn't flinch when he approached. She turned instead slowly, as though she had been waiting for this moment and simply wanted to meet it face to face. I don't know how to do this, she said. Do what? Be touched, without being measured. Her voice didn't tremble, but her gaze searched him, like she was still bracing for something to collapse. Be wanted for anything but function. He stepped closer so they were only inches apart. You're not an instrument, Oral said softly. You're a person, and I want you, not because of what you were designed for, but because of what you are. Her breath caught. She reached up, hesitant at first, then touched the side of his face. His stubble rasped against her palm. He leaned into it gently, his eyes never leaving hers. Then show me, she whispered. His hands came to rest at her waist, not to hold, not to guide, just to be near her, to offer his presence. When she didn't pull back, he let his fingers drift upward, brushing the edge of her ribs. She inhaled, shallow and sharp, but didn't move. You can stop me at any moment, he said. I don't want to. He kissed her, not hungrily, not in a rush. His mouth moved over hers like a question he already knew the answer to, but wanted her to speak aloud. Her lips opened beneath his, slow and sure. She tasted like salt, like breath held too long. When they finally parted, her eyes were wide, not with fear, but with disbelief. I didn't think it would feel like this. Like what? Like, I have a choice. She placed her hands on his chest, fingertips splayed. Then she stepped back just enough to let her linen wrap fall to the floor. The light caught her body in soft fragments. She didn't hide herself. Not this time. She stood tall, her hips full, her form unapologetically shaped, the curve of her thighs bearing the truth of a life they once tried to rewrite. She had been told she was wrong, made to cover what they couldn't standardize, but in this moment, in this light, she was magnificent. Oral stepped forward, hands at her waist again, and let his gaze travel, slow, respectful, awed. You're beautiful, he said. Exactly as you are. Her throat tightened. You see me, he nodded. I always saw you. She reached for him, undid the fastenings of his shirt with deliberate, trembling fingers. Her touch wasn't polished or practiced, but curious. An exploration, not a performance. When his skin was bare to her, she leaned in and kissed the center of his chest, right over his heart. Oral closed his eyes. That kiss didn't burn, it settled, like an anchor, like gravity. Her lips lingered for just a moment, soft against the steady rhythm of his heartbeat. When she pulled back, her breath hovered against his skin. "I've never touched someone who wanted to be known," she said. He opened his eyes to meet hers. "Then let me show you what it means to be known, fully." She inhaled, shallow, unsure, and nodded. They moved slowly, instinctively. When she straddled his lap, her thighs eased apart around him, settling her body against his with cautious pressure. She adjusted, uncertain, but unafraid. Her legs bracketed his hips, and her weight settled, not lightly, not with hesitation, but with meaning. He placed his hands at her sides, sliding upward along the supple tension of her back until they reached her shoulders. She watched his face, trying to read it. Not for judgment, but for intention. What she found there made her breath hitch, reverence. He wasn't devouring her with his eyes. He was drinking her in as if she were sacred. His palms moved downward now, coasting the arc of her waist before resting, gently, almost like prayer, at her hips. He paused, held her there, not possessively, worshipfully. His thumbs traced the outer line of her hips slowly. They were wide, undeniably full, powerful in a way that defied the sterile standards that once discarded her. The curve of them wasn't a defect. It was a song, and Oral listened to it like a man starved of beauty. Ari inhaled sharply, her fingers still knotted behind his neck, but her body frozen in place. His words landed like heat across her skin, not praise, but truth. And the truth stunned her. Her voice was nearly a whisper. "No one's ever said that to me." His hands never moved, still resting lightly at her waist as if he was afraid to break the moment. "No one's ever seen you," he replied. Her lips parted and the breath that escaped wasn't steady. Her eyes shimmered, and for a moment she seemed to retreat, not backward but inward, searching herself. "I've never—" She paused, swallowing hard. "I've never gone further than this. Not like this, not with anyone." Oral's brow softened, not in surprise but in understanding. "Then we go slow. You guide this, not me." "I want it," she said quickly. Then quieter. "I just don't know what comes next." "You don't have to," he murmured. "I'm right here. We learn it together." Her thighs, already cradling his sides, pressed closer, as if her body had decided before her voice had. She shifted forward, hips tilting, letting her weight settle over him more fully now, more intentionally. She rocked gently once, and the breath that left her was soft but involuntary. Oral's hands lifted just slightly, moving to the full breadth of her hips. He didn't squeeze. He held, as though he were supporting something sacred, something rare. His fingertips curved against her skin like a sculptor mapping divinity. She began to move again, tentatively at first, a slow circular roll of her hips. Her breath caught in her throat. Her eyes fluttered closed. He watched her, not with hunger, with awe. Her body began to find rhythm, a language made of pressure and heat. The movements were not graceful, but honest. Hesitant, eager, utterly new. Every shift of her hips over his drew a deeper sound from her lips. A breath, a gasp, a low hum that slipped free before she could silence it. When she leaned forward and kissed him, her lips trembled. Not from fear now, but need. Real, instinctive, blooming like heat in her chest. He met her mouth with his own, slow and deep. He tasted her slowly, the way a man tastes his first drink after exile. She moved her hips again, more deliberately this time. Their breath tangled between kisses, building into something hot and weightless. And then she moved again, downward, deliberate, seeking. He felt her pause, right at the edge of joining. Her entire body stilled. Oral's forehead rested against hers. "We stop if you say so." She shook her head almost violently. I want this. I want you." Her hands gripped his shoulders. She exhaled, long and deep, and shifted again. This time not teasing, but committing. She took him in slowly. Her body arched, her eyes widening, a sharp gasp escaping her lips as her body stretched to meet his. It wasn't pain, it was fullness, intense, unfamiliar, overwhelming. She didn't move for a moment, letting the sensation flood her system like light pouring into a dark room. Her breathing was shallow, lips parted. Oral didn't push, didn't thrust. He remained still, hands anchoring her hips, his thumbs rubbing gentle circles into her skin. Her voice came as a breath. "I didn't know it could feel like this." "Like what?" "Like I belong in it." In myself. She began to move again, slow, deliberate, grounding herself in every pass of their bodies. Her hips moved with a newfound reverence, not for him, but for her own body. She'd been told her curves were wrong, her width excessive. But now, her hips guided every movement. They commanded the rhythm, and he followed, worshipped. She rode him with measured confidence, and he surrendered to it, not passively, but wholly. Every upward roll of his hips met hers like prayer and response. Her moans grew deeper, richer, echoing in her throat. She leaned back slightly, one hand on his chest, the other tangled in his hair, using his body to anchor herself as her pace built. The pleasure surprised her, its sharpness, its swell. She tried to stifle the sounds at first, but her body betrayed her. Her hips found a rhythm that made her cry out softly with every pass. She stopped caring if it was too much. It was too much. That's why it was perfect. He gripped her hips more firmly now, guiding her only when her pace faltered, steadying her when she shook. She was shaking now, her thighs trembling, her lips parted, her eyes wild with sensation. "Oral," she gasped, voice breaking. "I'm here," he whispered, his voice low and thick. "Come undone, Ari. I've got you." She pressed down harder, rolled her hips deeper, and it broke over her. Her whole body seized in a wave that started at her hips and climbed through her spine like fire. She cried out, unrestrained now, her hips grinding down as her climax pulsed through her like a song sung only once in a lifetime. And through it all, he held her hips like holy ground, hands reverent, unmoving, as if to remind her, nothing about her needed to be less. When the trembling slowed, when her breathing evened, she collapsed forward, chest pressed to his, forehead to his throat. She was slick with sweat, so was he. Their skin clung where it touched, and neither of them moved, not for a long time. Finally, her voice came soft and shaken. "It was my first, and I didn't think I could feel that much." Oral kissed her temple, slow and quiet. "You felt everything," he murmured. "Exactly as you should." She pulled back to look at him, her green hair damp against her shoulders, her face flushed and open. "I wasn't wrong," she whispered. "My hips, my body, I wasn't wrong." "No," he said, pulling her back into his arms. "You were never wrong. You were just too much for the world that didn't know how." The shuttle's environmental systems purred with low effort, the cabin finally holding a comfortable warmth that wasn't just mechanical. Somewhere in the distance, the nav beacons blinked lazily, as if even the stars were too relaxed to care where they were headed. Ari was draped across Oral's chest, one leg slung over his, her fingers absently tracing patterns across the faint scar near his ribs. She didn't ask how he got it, yet. She would, but not now. Now she was busy cataloging the small, ridiculous fact that his skin smelled faintly like heated metal and cedar soap. Where did he even find cedar soap in deep space? "You smell like something expensive," she muttered against his collarbone. Oral huffed out a low laugh. Compliment accepted. It was a trade-off. Had to surrender half a medkit on Kyrith Station for a single bar. "Worth it," she murmured. "You smell like home and warm things and confidence I definitely don't have." "I'm pretty sure you just rewrote galactic standards of confidence," he said. "You rode me like you were reclaiming a throne." She groaned and buried her face in his shoulder. "You are never allowed to repeat that sentence again." "No promises," he said, grinning. Silence lapsed between them, but it was the easy kind now, the kind that fills a space with contentment instead of questions. Ari stretched languidly, her body warm and pleasantly sore in places she hadn't known could feel sore. Then her stomach growled, loudly. Oral looked down at her, utterly deadpan. "Is that a mating roar?" She slapped his chest, but the laugh escaped her anyway. "Don't test me. I've got hips and hunger. That makes me unstoppable." "I have ration packs," he offered solemnly, "if you promise not to overthrow me and assume command." She sat up, hair wild around her shoulders, the linen wrap barely clinging to one side of her frame. Her hip peeked out, full and unapologetic in the dim light. She noticed the way Oral's eyes dropped there for a split second before returning to her face. She liked that he looked but never reduced. "I might let you remain as ceremonial consort," she said, stretching, "but I'm taking full control of the food stores." He gave a dramatic sigh and rose from the floor, retrieving the utility bag from the overhead panel. "Very well, Supreme Commander Widehips," she gasped. "Did you just invent that title?" He tossed a ration packet onto the table beside her. It seemed fitting, regal, descriptive, historically significant. She narrowed her eyes. You're lucky I'm too hungry to declare war. Somehow, he said, unpacking a portable cooker, I feel like this is exactly how interstellar wars start. She pulled the wrap tighter around herself and padded barefoot to the table, where he was fiddling with the heating element. The soft hiss of steam filled the cabin as heat spread through the sealed rations. The smell of spiced protein broth filled the air. She leaned against the wall beside him, watching him with curious amusement. You were always like this? She asked. Charming, dry, infuriatingly calm? I'm calm because I know things tend to explode eventually, he said, handing her a steaming cup. Humor's a survival tactic. Well, she said, taking a long, grateful sip, I think it's working. You've survived me. Barely. You have impressive core strength, by the way. She choked on her soup and wheezed a laugh. Oral. What? I'm just stating facts. Scientific observation. You're a case study in biomechanical grace. I hate you. No, you don't. She rolled her eyes but didn't deny it. After they ate, she wandered to the control panel, scanning the nav route with practiced attention. Still on course for that ghost station? Yeah, Oral replied, joining her. Should reach it within the cycle. There's enough atmospheric buffer and power for shelter. No records of activity for a decade. Perfect for fugitives and semi-retired archivists. And empresses with unstoppable hips, he added. She gave him a look. That's twice now. Keep talking and I'll start charging per compliment. I'd go bankrupt in an hour, he said. You'd ruin me. She turned, suddenly serious beneath the smile. I don't want to ruin you. You won't, he said simply. You've already rebuilt me. She stepped forward, touching the collar of his shirt with gentle fingers. Then let's keep rebuilding each other. Deal? Deal! The alert pinged quietly, letting them know the station was within approach range. Oral moved to the console, prepping for atmospheric deceleration. Ari stood beside him, arms crossed, hip cocked slightly, watching the ghostly silhouette of their new home grow in the viewport. She nudged him. One condition. What's that? I get the bigger bed. Oral smiled, eyes still on the controls. Only if you promise not to use it to overthrow my authority again. Oh, I make no promises. And as the shuttle slipped into docking alignment with the sleeping station, the two of them stood together, equal parts lovers, exiles, and absurd co-conspirators, ready to turn exile into empire, one laugh at a time. The station lights hummed low overhead, casting a warm, uneven glow across the repurposed crew quarters. Outside the observation window, a slow rotation of stars drifted past like sediment in still water. Ari sat cross-legged on the bedding, her fingers toying with the corner of a thermal blanket she wasn't using. She wasn't cold. She was unsettled. Oral returned moments later, the soft thud of his boots barely breaking the stillness. He carried 2 mugs, steeped synthroot tea in one, rehydrated protein brew in the other. He offered her the tea. Still feeling off? He asked gently, settling beside her. Ari didn't answer immediately. Her eyes were unfocused, distant. I've been tracking my internal syncs, she said finally. Cycles, hormonal patterns. I've always been able to feel them, even when they weren't useful. But something's wrong. Oral stiffened. Wrong how? She turned her gaze toward him. Her face was unreadable, but her voice, barely audible, carried something ancient beneath it. My womb cast was classified non-viable. Insufficient gestational alignment. It's why they discarded me. Said I'd never carry a viable seed. Oral nodded slowly, not interrupting. I think they were wrong. She reached down and tapped the portable scanner on the floor between them. It blinked with soft blue light. I ran diagnostics twice. I thought it was a malfunction. Then I ran it a third time. A pause. Her hand trembled slightly as she passed him the screen. Gestational status, positive. Estimated development, 9.3 days. Oral stared at it. His lips parted, but nothing came out. For a long moment, the only sound in the room was the soft, methodical beeping of the scanner's idle cycle. Ari's voice broke the silence. Say something. Oral blinked, looked up and whispered, You're pregnant. She swallowed hard. I didn't think it was possible. Oral set the scanner down and reached for her hand. Neither did I. I don't know if it will last, she said, or if my body will reject it. I don't know what this means, but it's there. I can feel it. He pulled her hand gently into his lap, threading their fingers together. Your body isn't broken, Ari. She laughed, a sharp, dry sound. They taught me that it was. Every chart, every exam, every time I bled off cycle, they logged it as a flaw. Well, he said, voice quiet but steady, those charts didn't account for you, not as a person, not as someone who survived them. I don't even know what to feel, she admitted. Hope, panic, wonder. All of it, he said. You're allowed to feel all of it. Her lips quivered. What if I'm not ready? Oral leaned forward, resting his forehead against hers. Then we take it one breath at a time, together. She closed her eyes. I keep thinking this is some kind of anomaly, a glitch in the code. It's not, he murmured. You're not a glitch. You're the correction. That made her breath catch. He slid closer, pulled her into his arms. She didn't resist. She folded into him, her legs tangled over his, her face buried against his chest. His hand moved slowly over her back, reassuring, not possessive. His touch said, I'm not afraid of this. I'm not afraid of you. I don't know how to be a mother, she whispered. I never had one. Oral exhaled into her hair. Then you'll become the one you needed. Silence followed, not empty but blooming with unspoken truth. Her hand moved to her abdomen, still flat, still quiet. But inside, something had changed. She didn't understand it, couldn't explain it. But she no longer felt like something to be discarded. She felt chosen, unexpected, necessary. Oral kissed her temple. Do you want this? He asked softly. I don't know what I want, she said, honest and raw. But I want to find out, with you. They stayed that way for a long time, holding each other, breathing, grounding, neither asking for certainty, both willing to discover. The station lights dimmed automatically for rest cycle, leaving only the soft glow of the biosensors humming at the edge of the room. Ari whispered into the dark, her voice almost too quiet to hear. I think I want her to be born under stars that never judged us. Oral didn't respond. He just held her tighter. Outside, the universe spun on, uncaring. But inside, they had already begun to rewrite everything. Time passed differently on the ghost station. The days blurred, unmeasured, uncounted. Ari stopped tracking them after the second week. Her body became the only clock that mattered. Each morning she woke heavier, slower. Her balance shifted subtly, her hips protesting when she stood too fast, her breath catching after short climbs. Oral never hovered, but he was always near, ready, watching, learning her rhythm like a second pulse. The child inside her grew quickly. Zarathi physiology accelerated under emotional stability, a fact no archive had ever recorded, likely because no one had ever allowed a discarded Zarathi B female to feel safe long enough to thrive. Now, inside her body, something once labeled impossible began to take shape. A life. The station adapted around them. Oral converted the medical wing into a clean birth space. He calibrated temperature controls, cleared oxygen filters, removed rusted surgical tools and replaced them with warm blankets, distilled water, and his own quiet hands. They didn't speak much about the coming day. Neither of them said soon or when. But the knowing hung between them like gravity. It came in the middle of a quiet hour, no alarms, no dramatics, just a sharp intake of breath. Ari had been tending the small hydroponic corner they'd nurtured, bending to check a root pod when she froze. Her hands gripped the edge of the tank. Oral was at her side in seconds. She looked up. Her face was calm, but her voice was tight. It's time. They moved together without panic. He helped her walk, step by step, no rushing. She leaned into him as the first contraction took hold. Tight, deep, low in her belly. It passed slowly. Another came 10 minutes later, then 8, then 5. By the time she lay back on the makeshift birthing cot, sweat lined her forehead and her breath came in sharp exhales. Her long green hair clung to her shoulders. Her violet skin gleamed under the soft light of the emergency panels above. Oral knelt beside her, sleeves rolled up, hands steady. You're safe, he said, again and again. You're safe. I've got you. Her voice cracked as she gasped through another wave. If you say breathe one more time, I'm going to break your jaw. He smiled despite the sweat beading on his own brow. Noted. She gripped his arm hard enough to bruise. Her hips arched off the cot as another contraction hit and she bit back a cry, not out of pride but focus. She was somewhere between pain and transcendence now, where the body stops asking questions and simply does what it must. This body, she panted between clenched teeth, was supposed to be wrong. It's not, Oral whispered. brushing damp hair from her face. It never was. I feel like I'm being torn open. You're being opened, he said, to let life out, the way you were meant to. Tears pricked her eyes, not from the pain, but from hearing that. Time folded into itself. Breaths became hours. Pressure grew unbearable, then shifted. The moment changed. Her body pushed. Ari cried out, not from agony, but from instinct, from power. Her thighs shook. Her hands trembled. But her voice rose with a kind of animal strength she didn't know she had. Oral held her hips, not to restrain, but to support. And then, the cry. It was small, sharp, unformed, but real, alive. The baby was slick and pink-purple, with dark curls already damp on its head, limbs flailing as if offended to be suddenly separate. Oral caught her gently, wrapped her in the soft cloth they'd warmed, and held her for a breathless second. Then he looked at Ari. "You did it," he whispered. Ari's chest heaved. Her arms were open, reaching. "Give her to me." He laid the baby against her chest. She let out a sob, uncontrolled, unplanned, as the tiny weight pressed into her. Her daughter, her child, born from a womb the world had declared useless. Her body had been wrong, they'd said, and yet here she was, breathing, warm, real. "She's so small," Ari whispered, and loud. "She gets that from you." Ari laughed, broken and joyful. The baby shifted, let out another bleat of protest, and rooted instinctively toward her mother's chest. Ari adjusted, guiding her with shaky hands. When the child latched, Ari froze, then exhaled. Everything in her went quiet. Oral sat on the floor beside them, arms resting across his knees. He looked at Ari, not like a man in awe, but like a man changed. They didn't speak for a long time. Eventually, the baby drifted into sleep, her tiny body tucked against Ari's skin. Ari looked down at her, then at Oral. "Do you believe in fate?" she asked. He looked at her for a long, full second. "I believe in you. That's enough." She smiled, soft and radiant and tired. "She'll never grow up believing her body is a defect," she said. "No," Oral replied. "She'll grow up knowing she was born of strength." Ari let her head fall back onto the pillow. "Then we've already won." He reached for her hand and held it tightly. And as the station lights dimmed around them, a new heartbeat echoed through the quiet, steady, small, fierce. A beginning, a breath. A girl born under stars that never judged her. The station didn't hum so much anymore. It sighed. Soft, rhythmic pulses of energy drifted through its walls like breathing. The lights came on slowly in the mornings now, calibrated to a natural spectrum Oral had configured himself. No harsh flickers, just warmth, gold, gentle. Ari stretched beneath the sheets, bare legs tangled with the linen, her hand automatically reaching across the bed, and found nothing. She opened one eye. The other side of the bed was empty, but still warm. A faint sound echoed from down the hall, a melody, low and off-key. Oral was singing. Badly. She smiled into the pillow. The air smelled like heat and fruit. The hydroponics had started producing actual citrus, and Oral had a ridiculous habit of squeezing them into everything: tea, stew, even skin salve. The man had turned a forgotten military station into something almost domestic. She rose slowly, wrapping herself in a soft tunic. Her body still carried the weight of birth, the subtle ache of new motherhood, but it no longer felt foreign. Her hips were heavier, her breasts still tender, her muscles tired, but every inch of her felt used well, and that, in itself, was joy. She stepped barefoot into the hallway, walking quietly toward the source of the noise. The scene in the galley made her stop. Oral stood at the counter, cradling their daughter in one arm, shirtless, hair wild, completely unaware that he was swaying as he stirred something in a pot. He was humming that awful tune again, off-beat and out of tune, as the baby made soft, gurgling noises against his shoulder. "You're going to damage her ears," Ari called. He turned, not startled, just pleased. "Too late. She's already developed a taste for terrible music and emotionally unavailable men." Ari snorted and walked over. "You're not emotionally unavailable. Give it time." She slid her arms around him from behind, cheek pressed between his shoulder blades. "You're a terrible liar." Their daughter made a soft, chirping sound, and Ari leaned around to kiss her tiny forehead. "I think she likes the humming," Ari admitted. "She better," Oral replied. "It's the only concert I'm giving today." They spent the morning like that, slow, quiet together. They took turns eating. They changed the baby together. They watched the stars pass like drifting memories outside the window. And when their daughter napped, Ari curled up beside her in the reading nook, while Oral worked silently in the background, rerouting small systems, always fixing, always improving. Later that afternoon, Ari found him in the old archive chamber, now converted into a garden. He was crouched in the soil bed, coaxing a stubborn root shoot from the nutrient pod. "You're still trying to grow that useless plant?" she asked, arms folded. "It's not useless," he said. "It's a med herb. Helps with inflammation. You just like it because it smells like old whiskey." Oral looked up and grinned. "And because you like it when I smell like old whiskey." Ari rolled her eyes but didn't argue. She knelt beside him, resting her weight on her knees. The soil was warm under her hands, and she dug her fingers in slowly. The smell of wet earth filled the air. They worked like that for a while. No words, just motion. Later, when the child stirred, they returned to her as one. She was hungry and loud about it. Ari fed her, while Oral sat beside them, one arm around Ari's back, the other tracing soft circles across the infant's foot. "She's already grown," Ari whispered. "Her legs are longer, her hands stronger." "That's what babies do," Oral said, voice low. "I'm scared," she admitted. "Not of her. Just of losing this." He didn't answer at first. He just leaned forward, pressed a kiss to her temple, then another to the baby's hand. "Then we'll hold it close," he said. "Every day, every moment. We won't let it slip." Ari exhaled slowly. That night, they slept together on the large cot they'd assembled from scavenged furniture and cushions. Their daughter lay nestled between them, wrapped in soft fabric, her breath tiny and steady. Outside, the stars turned silently, no alarms, no sirens, just warmth and breath and sleep and the quiet promise of tomorrow.